Everyone, welcome to the BBC's Facebook Live. I'm James Longman, and we're here in London, joined by the actor Douglas Booth, who's just been to Iraq and also, he's been meeting Syrian refugees in Iraq and also Iraqi refugees there who've been fleeing the war in Syria and also leaving parts of those countries which have been controlled by the so-called Islamic State. What we're doing here is try to get you engaged. We want you to send Douglas, your questions, so please do. I'll be getting them here on my phone, so I might look a bit rude while I'm talking to Douglas, but it's only because I'm reading your questions. So let's kick things off. Douglas, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So first off, what have you been doing?
So I recently travelled to Erbil in Iraq to meet Syrian refugees who were living in an urban environment there, who had fled from Syria seeking safety there, and also meeting internally displaced Iraqis who had been fleeing out of Mosul, which is the second largest city in Iraq, which has been under the so-called Islamic State's control for a couple of years now. So I was meeting people who'd been newly liberated or managed to escape that city, and seeing the work that UNHCR had been doing to build camps to shelter and protect these people, and also assist and protect the people, the Syrian refugees who were living in urban areas of Iraq.
Can you tell people a little bit about some of the people that you met when you were there?
Yeah, I met a great variety of people. I'll start with the Syrians that are living in the urban environments. I think what struck me most about them was how hard it was to get by. The situation in northern Iraq, the economic situation was terrible. Oil prices had dropped, and the conflict that had been going on has just sort of brought a halt to the economy, meaning there were very little jobs. Most parents there couldn't get work to support their family, and the trend that I saw was that most children, some as young as 10, 11, maybe even 9, were supporting their entire family because employers could employ them for much less money and work them extremely hard. So you had children who were working 12-hour days. Often lots of them were paying medical bills for their parents or other members of their families. They were effectively working for free, stuck in a virtual prison. And also heard about the trauma from these young people. They'd been going through, just hearing about a young boy who was supporting his whole family, just 15 years old, who had been looking on his phone updates as Daesh or the so-called Islamic State came in, and he was just traumatized. I can imagine it's the kind of thing I have as a nightmare. And you wake up and go, "Oh, that was horrible." There was this terrible force sort of coming towards us, and these kids are just seeing this and updates and just were terrified of being either subscripted into the army or being killed. And we heard stories about young kids trying to take their life because of the trauma that they had suffered.
I think you're particularly interested in young men, aren't you? Because a lot of refugees are young men. A lot of the people who leave first from a lot of these countries happen to be the youngest men in their family, so that they can go and perhaps find refuge for the rest of their families somewhere else. But obviously there's been the migration crisis in Europe, and there's been a lot talked about. What's the thing that struck you most about meeting young men in this part of the world?
Well, I'm interested in all refugees, but I am particularly interested in young men because I often feel they're the most vilified of the refugee community. And I'm a young man myself, so I really relate to that. And as you said, they're often the first people that are sent to try and get to a safe country, and then potentially bring family members with them. And you often see images of them, during the migration crisis, of them throwing stones at border guards, and I just think about the frustrations of these young men and young men who have had their narrative hijacked.
Why? Because we've made them out to be criminals.
Well, yeah, because I feel people on either side want to hijack their narrative. You have governments on one side trying to paint their picture in a certain way to control migration numbers, and then you have forces like Daesh or the so-called Islamic State who are also trying to hijack the narrative on the other side. I imagine me as a young man just feeling completely, utterly lost and frustrated, and having your identity taken from you. So that's why I'm particularly interested in that. But it was also amazing to go to Iraq and meet these young men and just to hear sort of stories, terrible stories about young men supporting their families and young girls supporting their families as well. But also to hear sort of small stories of defiance, like a young gentleman I met who got married and music was banned, football was banned.
I think you were saying that even on the football shirts where they've got
they made they had to cut out their football emblem because they weren't allowed to show that kind of sort of iconography. But to hear the little stories of defiance, like he got married to a girl from his local village that he knew from before, and they had this party, and they pulled down the black-up blinds and they played music which was banned, and he dared to trim his beard, which was banned also, and they had this little celebratory party. And then I also spoke to him about what it must be like to support a loved one in such extreme circumstances. You know, he's just a young guy, just like myself. So it was, it was
interesting for you to see this. Because you're 24 and
I'm 24, and to speak to another who's 23 years old, and to sort of hear about.
We've got some messages from people. So Elizabeth says people should never be living in these conditions or be stripped of their humanity by war and terror. Vili has written in to say thank you for your work highlighting the refugee cause, Douglas. There's a question here from Luke, and you went there in your capacity as a UNHCR supporter. Luke asks, what long-term plans are in the works to sustain and or relocate these people? Because you've got to remember, this is in the context of something like 4 million people who've had to leave Syria. You've got something like over 200,000 Syrians who've gone into Iraq.
Yeah.
Luke's right, it's a big crisis. What is the UNHCR doing? What does it need in order to do its job better? So
the UNHCR is the humanitarian organisation, and their job is to be there to shelter and protect refugees at the point when they need it, and to continue to shelter and protect them for as long as they need. How we're going to solve this issue in, say, Syria or Iraq, that is a political issue, which is a very complicated one. But I think collectively we need to have solidarity as an international community. We have to not just care about these things when it's at the top of our news headlines, and then let our compassion just fall off when it tires or when something else comes along. We have to, if we want to help, if you want to be there and support these people, you've got to just be there all the way. And the good thing about the UNHCR is they are, like in the situation in Aleppo right now, they are there waiting. They have the resources to go in there and support civilians as soon as they are.
Because winter's coming now, isn't it?
So, and also the immediate thing is that they have a winterization program because it's getting very cold in Iraq. I was there, in November, and it was already getting extremely cold at night, extremely harsh winds, and there are really vulnerable families and vulnerable children, and the UNHCR are doing everything they can to shelter and protect them. But with the Mosul crisis, it is terribly underfunded at the moment, and so what people can do is they can donate that, even £3 or £5 can provide a blanket for a child. And if you do want to do that, by the way, you can go to unhcr.org /Douglas-Booth, and you can read more about my trip to Iraq, and you can donate there. But also what we can do is just talk to your friends about this issue, look into individual refugee stories, and just try and educate yourself a bit, and start a conversation with your friends.
Lottie has asked, Douglas, have you kept in contact with some of the people? Are you still following their journeys? I mean, this is something that, because you went to Greece last year, didn't you? You went to Lesbos to meet people there. This is something that you care about. You've been back to Iraq. Is it possible to keep in contact with people? Is there a way that you can do that, follow individual stories?
I have been trying to follow certain individual stories, but it is hard because people get lost into the system very quickly. There's a few people that I know in Germany that I hope to one day seek out, but for their privacy and security, I don't want to name them right now. But yeah, it is heartbreaking because, and you do have this sense of guilt, when you go there and you get to come on a plane and fly home and return to normal life. And I think of the people that I've met often, and yeah, I do try to keep up with the ones that I can. But the situation in Mosul, there are 1 million internally displaced people in Iraq. But the people that I met and the stories I heard will definitely stick with me forever.
Dana says, I'm so happy to see people caring and actually doing something. Did you get a sense, Daria has asked if you got a sense of who people there blamed for their situation, if there was a feeling that they'd been abandoned, or do they blame their local governments? I think a lot of them had come from different places, hadn't they? Come from Syria and Iraq, but...
Yeah. People often were so... that they weren't talking about... Lots of people didn't talk to me about blame. They kind of often were asking for help. And trying to, but no, not really blame. I mean, I spoke to one gentleman who was the head of this beautiful, wonderful family, and he actually was extremely hopeful for Iraq. He talked about his time in the military there years ago and in the police force, where he would sit down and have lunch with Christians, Muslims, all different factions within Iraq, and he remembered a time where there was peace within Iraq, and he hoped for that. And he said he's travelled around the world, and he said he's never met a kinder, more compassionate, warm, welcoming group of people than the Iraqis. And I actually have to say, I witnessed that. I left that region with a lot.
Had you been there before?
No, I had never. And I left that region with massive hope, having met some really incredible people. And he said, he felt that it wasn't necessarily the Iraqi people or the Syrian people that there is a problem with. There is meddling from outside, and I'm not a politician, and it's not my place to say, but you do feel that a lot of the problems in these areas are coming from, external forces and proxy.
Well, I can certainly say that when I meet a lot of refugees as well, and the thing that you mostly hear from people is that they just want help. There's no real sense of... they don't look back, they just look forward, and they're trying to they've already left their home, so they're looking to change their lives.
Yeah, at the point when you've reached the absolute bottom, all you try and do is look forward and look for hope. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just in the interest of balance. Most of the people who are commenting are very, very positive about everything. But one person has written, and I'm sure you've had this before, a celebrity jumping on the refugee bandwagon. How do you feel when you see a comment like that? Because you do see it a lot, don't you? I mean, people...
Yeah. I think I try not to engage with that. I mean, you can criticise me for trying to do some good. Although,
does it make you a bit angry though?
There's no point getting angry about it. I mean, I would encourage that person to look at the work that I've been doing consistently over the last couple of years, and I think if you actually looked at the work I've been doing or followed any of the things I've been doing, you would see that this isn't something that I've been talking about when it's at the top of the news cycle. It's something I've been talking about probably consistently week on, week out for many years now. I've travelled to Lesvos and met refugees in Greece. I have volunteered in the UK getting aid to people in Calais. I have travelled to Iraq and I've been meeting families there. I don't feel that I am jumping on any bandwagon. No. This is something that I feel very passionate about, and I challenge that person to talk to me in 10 years when I will be doing exactly the same thing, because this is a problem that isn't going away.
And I just sort of say
I'd ask him what he's doing to help.
Yeah. Too. Well, look, I mean, I feel that sometimes when celebrities do get involved, as a journalist, I spend my days trying to get stories on television, and every now and again, if a celebrity's interested, my editors are interested, and so I can get it on television. So it does actually help. I just want to go through a couple of the other questions. It's about children requiring psychological medical assistance. Well, you met a young boy who you said felt that he just wanted to end his life because he couldn't see a way forward. Can you maybe just describe not just his case, but maybe other cases of people just feeling, because I think we think of refugees as being in material need a lot of the time, but I think there's a real sense that people who've lost everything, there's a psychological issue there, and a loss of hope. Can you describe what you saw?
So yes, there were definitely, especially within the Syrian refugees who had been displaced for a very long period of time, or for 4 years, say, and were living in an urban environment, often having to support their families. They were taking that very hard, and it was extremely difficult to see. But the UNHCR have they don't just provide shelter and protection in that sense. They provide legal aid, and they have people that sit down, and they have counsellors, and there are people that sit down. And then there are lots of NGOs actually out there that are providing that. And it was amazing to see the relationship that a lot of these children had with the workers from UNHCR and other organisations. They had a relationship with the people that they would see on a weekly basis, and there's park centres which stands for something, I can't remember the exact thing, but it's places where people can go and have counselling and talk about sensitive issues, and there is that support network from what I saw. But also what I think is so important with young people about their mental health is education, because these are the people that are going to be rebuilding their future their future countries, and I know from my experience growing up how important education is, and for your mental health, and to be surrounded by other young people, and to be given a chance to actually be a child and grow up, and that is so important for mental health. So we're having a lost generation at the moment, and I don't know exactly the way we'll resolve the issue, but it is so important. And the UNHCR has been doing an appeal called With Refugees, which is basically they were at the UN having a summit about last month or the month before, which is saying that every child deserves, shelter, protection, and an education.
Well, I'm just going to go through a couple of more of the comments that we've had, because I think people responded to that comment that man made. Okay. Claire says, I think anyone using their influence to raise awareness is a great thing. Mary says, bless you, Douglas. Eddie says, well done, Douglas. Ignore the haters. You're a good man making a difference. Keep up the good work. I just suppose one final thing. What will you take away from this experience of meeting people? What is it that drives you forward, and what inspires you about the whole process? People ask you, why do you do this? And I think Helen Bamber had this amazing quote. She was like, why not? And it's about having compassion for people that you don't know, that you will never know. And what inspires me is that I feel so fortunate to live in the country that I do. I'm so lucky, and it could so easily have been me. I've met so many people. I felt like when I've been to Iraq or met refugees in Greece, I've met my mother, I've met my best friend, I've met my friends from school, I've met my teachers from school, I met my doctor. These are just people just like you and I personally can't exist within a bubble. People are suffering around the world, and it is our duty as an international community to stand in solidarity with refugees. So for me, it's not even a question, it has to be. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
And thanks everyone for watching as well. This was all part of the UNHCR's winter appeal. So what Douglas is doing is raising awareness to get funds to try to get people in these parts of the world the help that they need to face the winter. So that's what this was about. And thank you so much for your questions. See you again.
Thank you.